Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Eliza. I'm the Customer Engagement Specialist here at Pandel. I'm so pleased to announce we're having, I believe it is our seventh in the Pandel Leadership Series webinar. Today's topic is what separates geospatial leaders from the rest. And we're very excited to have Matthew Lewin as our speaker today. Matthew is the Director of Management Consulting at Esri Canada and is our guest speaker today. He is the author of Geospatial Strategy Essentials for Managers, as well as being an accomplished management consultant, technology strategist, and business director. Matthew specializes in complex business and technology transformation using enterprise GIS and location intelligence. His industry experience spans the energy and resources sector, as well as the municipal, state, and federal government agencies, and other commercial sectors. We're very excited to hear Matthew's presentation today. So without further delay, I am more than happy to pass the stage over to you, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks very much, Eliza, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again to the kind folks at Pandel for having me. I'm really quite excited to be here. Haven't done one of these Pandel leadership sessions before, so yeah, really looking forward to delivering this presentation today and hearing some questions and thoughts that you might have on what I think is quite an interesting topic, something that's near and dear to my heart, which is titled What Separates Geospatial Leaders from the Rest. For first, those who don't know me, my name is Matt Lewin. I'm the Director of Management Consulting at Esri Canada. And in that role, my team and I, we really focus on helping our customers and organizations from many different industry sectors from across the country, really, and around the world, devising geospatial strategies and putting in strategic plans. And so doing that work over the years, and I've been in that role for over 5 years with Esri Canada for over 10, since 2010 anyway, and a bit of a boomerang in between there. It's from doing this kind of strategy work over the years that I've really noticed that some organizations that we work with really thrive with geospatial technology. Some are really somewhere in the middle and kind of plodding along. And then some others, I would say, are somewhat struggling, maybe behind the curve in terms of getting the most out of their investment. And so to better understand this issue, we decided to do a bit of research at Esri Canada. So in 2019, we conducted a study. It was largely with IDC, which is a global market intelligence firm. And our goal was to tease out what specifically were the leaders in the industry, from across industries, but that are using geospatial technology. What is it that they're doing and doing well that others weren't so much? And so those results were written up into a white paper called Winning with Location Intelligence. Now, some of you might have seen it, some of you might have not. It's available for download still on esri.ca. But today what I want to do, though, is present you those findings, and as well as just elaborate a bit on some of the context that we've uncovered since that paper was released a couple of years ago. It's always nice to start at the beginning. And it's really helpful, I think, to look at really how far the geospatial and GIS industry have come over the years. If you go back to, say, the 60s and 70s, digital mapping systems and GIS really have their roots in what we call computerized mapping. And in those days, they were tools used primarily as, for basic map production. They were very much focused on the individual, on individual workflows, and much of it was used for what we might be scientific research or for academic purposes. And then as we moved through the 80s and the 90s, things really opened up. We saw the emergence of what we might call desktop GIS. That came on the scene around that time. And these were systems that supported not just individuals, but teams and workflows that could support whole departments. And this included things like data collection all the way to data analysis and mapping. Then as we moved into the 2000s and then 2010s, the conversation very much shifted from desktop-based geospatial analysis and GIS to the web, and ultimately to supporting entire enterprises. And so the term enterprise GIS, enterprise systems, came on the scene around the early 2000s. And this was similar, like I said, to the trends that we saw with other systems, whether it was CRM systems, ERP systems, business intelligence platforms. It was really the web, and specifically web-based services, that allowed this. It really allowed systems to scale to the point of supporting now not just departments, but whole organizations. And this has really been what I would say is the dominant pattern of deployment for, say, the last 20 years, which really then brings us to where we are today in 2021 and where we're going in the future. And that really is around this concept of the geospatial infrastructure. And some may have heard of it, some may have not, but what it's really about is it's connecting many organizations now together through a common set of open standards, open APIs, open systems, open data. And it ultimately enables collaboration across multiple organizational boundaries rather than the previous model of enterprise, which was largely within organizations. So in terms of the technology, we've really moved from the level of the individual in the early days, in the 80s, 60s, and 70s, to the team and the department in the 80s and 90s, to multiple departments in the 2000s and early 2010s, and now into the whole organization level in the current day. And as a whole, with this new geospatial infrastructure model, even with enterprise GIS, the potential of geospatial technology is just phenomenal. It's greater than it's ever been. These days when we talk about the technology at Esri, we often talk about 4 systems or 4 ways that organizations really adopt and use geospatial technology. And you can see from left to right on this slide, we often see it used primarily kind of first and foremost as a system of record where data, where imagery, maps are acquired, they're stored, they're managed, they're integrated with other systems so that we have that kind of single authoritative source of geospatial data. We see it used as a system of insight where raw data that's stored in that system of record is analyzed, is modeled, is interpreted for the purpose of revealing spatial patterns, spatial analysis, really to support that notion of evidence-based decision-making. We see it used as a system of engagement, which means using maps and spatial content to communicate. This can be with customers, it can be with partners, with employees, with the general public, media. This is really a way to pass on information as well as a way to receive feedback from those stakeholders. So as an example, we've all seen local and regional COVID-19 dashboards. They're out there. Every community, many organizations have adopted them. Most of these, you'll probably have noticed, provide updates and insights on the pandemic in some form of geospatial geographic context. Whether there's a map there, whether there's charts and dashboard graphics, they provide some information as to where the pandemic situation is occurring, where vaccination locations are, hotspots, that kind of thing. This is really a system of engagement in action. And then finally, you put them together, and what you get, these 3 systems, is really you get that system of systems, which is the vision of the infrastructure, where different organizations really are collaborating on the basis of that shared data, those shared workflows, a shared understanding of geography. And like I said, this is really the vision of the geospatial infrastructure. And if you drill a bit deeper, you can really see what the potential of the technology is. And at Esri, we call these patterns of use, and there's generally 9 of them. And they're a really effective way of understanding what are the modern capabilities of a, like I said, modern geospatial platform. There are, if you go through this model here, you see there's the traditional, what we call patterns of use, things like mapping and visualization, data management. These are really the foundation of digital geography. This includes use cases like production of maps, management of spatial data sets, really the bread and butter of what we call geo. As we step across, the functionality ups into more modern use cases such as field mobility. This extends office workflows into the field. It includes things like navigation, field data collection, work order dispatch, vehicle tracking, people tracking, all done in the field. As we continue along, we get even more sophisticated patterns of use. We see things like real-time monitoring, Internet of Things, for example, streaming data from smartphones, from sensors, making decisions in real time. It includes advanced location analytics, where we leverage the human-led or even machine-led learning-led analysis of spatial data. And this involves developing predictive models. It can conduct diagnostic analysis. It can also include designing and planning systems. These allow for those 2D, 3D modeling, scenario-based planning of natural and built environments. And then finally, we have patterns that really reflect that system of engagement, whether it's bringing maps and analysis through executive dashboards, whether it's engaging your customers with story maps, or simply providing open access to your content through a public portal. All of these focus on making relevant geographic information easily accessible to those who need it. So back to the purpose of this discussion. The reality is that even with all this power available to us today, there's still quite a wide range of variety in how effectively organizations are leveraging and using these capabilities. And this slide here is from the IDC research that I mentioned, and it breaks down industry by industry, the relative maturity of organizations in terms of how effective they are at using geospatial technology to achieve key business outcomes. These outcomes can range from things like reducing health and safety incidents. It can include improving customer service, streamlining field workflows. A range of business metrics were used in this study, and they were relevant to all the various industries that were studied. And as you might expect, we found that some organizations are really ahead of the curve. And then obviously some are quite behind. And even though at least approximately, I think it was 85 to 90% of the organizations that were surveyed or studied in this research indicated that geospatial technology is either critical or very important to their business strategy, many of them are still struggling to get the most out of their investment. So really, the importance is well understood. The value and the role of location and geospatial is well understood across the board, but the ability to really wield the technology well is still a struggle for many. And that's true across all industries. So it begs the question, what are the leaders? What are those at the top of that bar graph there? What is it that they're doing differently or better, shall we say, to get these results? And what we discovered through that research was that the organizations in, say, the top 10 to 15% of the study tended to think very holistically about their geospatial capabilities. They don't just focus on the tools or the data. They don't focus on one department or two. Instead, they really think in broad organization-wide terms. And they think in terms of people, process, and technology. And they think more specifically about how those three concepts, how those dimensions work together to achieve the results that they're trying to accomplish. And they work very diligently to establish a level of maturity across all of these areas. As I was saying, leaders really focus on to really build these highly effective programs, really falls into these 5 key areas. And so I'll go through them in brief and then talk about them a little bit more in depth, using some examples from the energy industry, given that a lot of the audience here is from that industry, and I've had experience working in oil and gas, and pipeline, midstream, upstream, downstream utilities over the years. So I'll bring up some examples of each of these. But first, in brief, the first is strategy. And so this means that these organizations carefully define how they leverage data and technology and expertise to advance their organization's strategy. So that's the ultimately that leaders in these areas really focus on devising a healthy and carefully devised strategy. The second is what we call literacy. And this refers to how well these organizations understand the many geospatial patterns of use that we talked about, and how broadly they apply these patterns across their business. And we'll see how in a bit. The third is organization. And this refers to the internal processes, governance, the professional development that they put in place. The fourth is technology and data, of course, but specifically it refers to how they focus their technology stack from the ground up to really support ready and secure access to geospatial data. And then finally, the fifth is culture. This means that they really work to encourage what I call a geospatial mindset, or a set of behaviors where people, even outside the traditional GIS, geospatial circles, recognize the value and the importance of geography and how it fits into the work. So put them together, these are 5 what we call pillars of location intelligence. And within each of these 5 areas, there's a set of essential practices that I'll discuss. But these are really what are the difference between those leaders that they commit to these areas and the rest. So the first and most really important of these pillars, I always think, is the strategy pillar. And what we found from the research is just having a strategy is one of the most important aspects of being a leader, of driving value with geospatial technology and GIS. And really what we found was that key to your strategy are really two things. One is that you have a holistic approach, okay? Meaning that you cover people, you cover process, you cover technology, you cover data in how and make decisions around how you will deliver your geospatial capabilities to your organization. And the second is really the outcomes. So it's all good and well to have a really well-formed geospatial program, but the outcomes that they achieve in terms of the value, and that can be things like cost, that could be things like risk, that can be revenue growth, that the value is being driven through your program, and that your strategy is being enabled, your business strategy is being enabled through your geospatial capability. So the example that I give you here is from a energy business in Canada. We worked with them to devise a geospatial strategy, and a lot of the strategy really focused on building a corporate geospatial center. And it was really focused on centralizing a lot of their capabilities inside the center, and all the rest of their approach is really around how they then can deliver value through the center into different business units. So you can see the people side, they established this center of excellence, upgrade a lot of their their analytics and real-time skills within that center. On the process side, they really moved to a self-service model and established this geospatial data stewards network. On the technology, they moved up to a enterprise platform, consolidated a lot of point solutions, a lot of legacy customizations, focused on implementing some quick wins that align with their strategy. And on data, they really focused on lifecycle management, on establishing standards around data and metadata. And so all these work together. They don't really, there's no people strategy or tech strategy or data strategy that's kind of independent of it. There's really one cohesive set of sub-strategies, but a cohesive approach that's really there to drive some of those key outcomes that you see on the right of the screen. So a lot of the value that they are pursuing as a very risk-driven, very operational efficiency-driven business is around improving the data integrity, reducing technical debt, reducing support costs, lowering their overall profile and risk profile on the IT side. And then the strategy, it's all around driving business innovation through digital, through the digital strategy, which is the mandate of a lot of oil and gas companies these days. Lowering the H&S incidents through tools and apps that will help support that, and ultimately improving the regulatory standing through things like emissions reporting tools, air and water quality tools that we'll see in the next slide. But the point is that the leaders put a strategy in place, whether it's in energy industry or in midstream, if it's in any sort of the streams of energy, whether it's outside in public sector, that these leaders really focus on building a cohesive approach that drives the outcomes in terms of value and strategy. And so, like I said, there were a set of real more tactical specific practices under each pillar. And so for the strategy practice, there's really 4 that we uncovered in this research. And these were, like I said, these were 4 really activities, practices that are really essential to making sure that, in this case, the strategy is going to be successful. And they're listed there. So the first is measuring outcomes. We found that leaders have a really good, strong, rigorous way of measuring in qualitative at least, but ideally in quantitative terms, if their strategy and how their strategy is achieving their business outcomes. The strategic alignment was a big factor. This is, of course, how the strategy is actually driving those overall objectives of their business. Stakeholder support, it's that we have broad support and engagement from the various users, from the various consumers of the information. And then leadership commitment, one of the biggest and most important factors. We found that through the studies, the most successful organizations have very active, very engaged senior leadership, senior management, decision makers involved, invested in their strategy. The next pillar here is literacy. And literacy cannot be underestimated. By definition, what it really means is literacy really refers to an ability or a competency in an area. And in the case of the geospatial realm, what we found was that literacy really is reflected in two ways. That it's really in terms of the breadth of use, so how many business units benefit from the geospatial technology and data, as well as kind of the depth of knowledge in geospatial. We call this kind of acumen, meaning how many of those patterns of use can be or are and can be leveraged across the organization. So it's really about the depth in terms of patterns of use and breadth in terms of deployment to many different business areas. So it really reflects that this organization understands their business well, and they understand how to apply geospatial technology well in various creative ways into those different areas. And you can see here some examples of, again, this is a upstream oil and gas operator, and some of the solutions that form the basis of their strategy. You can see that in this case, it's covering many different areas, everything from urban operations, air quality, emissions management, it's into the emergency response realm, equipment logistics, everything from operational to more strategic uses to ESG, to health and safety. There was a recognition that geospatial technology could support and enable many different business areas. And in terms of the depth side of things, in the highlighted yellow there, you can see that there were also many opportunities to use geo in many of those patterns of use. It's not just producing maps and doing analysis. There is field data collection components, field navigation, field dispatch. There's real-time data consumption. There's real-time analytics. There's pushing information and maps out to stakeholders in the community, out to the media, used for public relations, especially around emissions management, more sensitive reporting capabilities that they need, so they can build more compelling case of how they're managing being an effective emissions steward using maps and providing this information through the vehicle of a map. So you can see there, like I said, literacy is really about the depth and the breadth of use. And again, the practices, there are some, we call these largely a couple of different names, but I like geospatial acumen. That's a nice term for it. This really does reflect how widely deployed it is across all those patterns of use, and business integration, which really refers to how broadly it's deployed into the organization across different areas. The next pillar is organization. And organization really refers to, we'll call it the softer side of your program. This is about your people, it's about your process, it's about governance. And it's really the thing that really is the engine to what you're going to do. So in terms of the people and process, or the processor and governance side of things, it's really how you set up and deliver your geospatial capabilities as a service to your organization. And then in governance, it's really how you oversee and how you set accountabilities and make decisions about your investment in geospatial technology. And so this example here is from a transmission business. And you can see part of their strategy was really to focus on developing a service delivery model. And a lot of this model in this circle diagram here is based somewhat around those patterns of use, or around kind of service-oriented geospatial services, things like visualization mapping services, reporting and analysis services, even down to planning and consultation. So the idea of delivering GIS or geo as a service is something that we've seen a lot of leaders do. And then on the other side is governance. And this is something kind of the other end of the spectrum when we're talking about steering and directing an effective program. We see that those that are taking a really focused view of governance and building up the appropriate decision-making accountability structure are really, really moving ahead well. They have a really keen insight to how effective their strategy is, how it's progressing, what it's accomplishing. They're dividing up responsibilities and accountabilities appropriately. In this case, you can see it's divided into kind of a technical-based working group, which is responsible for architectural decisions, platform decisions, application decisions. There's a data group focused on data quality, data stewardship, metadata management, for example. And there's operational. There's day-to-day workflows, processes, people. Those groups are there really responsible for thinking about what is the best approach, what are the key decisions, strategic decisions that are required. And then they elevate those, provide us almost as like a recommendation engine up to the strategic advisory committee to make decisions, which ultimately goes up in this case to a steering committee and executive sponsors who essentially stamp it, approve it for funding, make investments, and ultimately say yes or no to the direction of the program. And then on the people side, the main practice is around really professional development. Obviously, people are at the heart of your program. And in this case, it's a case of how well are you nurturing and developing your talent. And there's lots of ways to do this, but the leaders we're finding more and more are developing really specific role-appropriate program development opportunities. And in this case, a nice approach to it was to develop kind of almost a curriculum around different personas that appear across the organization, from decision maker, as you see, business user, field user, power user, professional. All have different needs, all have different interests in their geospatial world. So they all have different education requirements, different development opportunities, different needs. So dividing it this way, developing a really focused, you don't have to do it by personas, but certainly taking a focused approach around what is the broad need in terms of professional development across all the people inside of the organization. And again, here are the essential practices just laid out. Again, the last example showed you professional development. Again, targeted programs or education programs for individuals, a governance framework. This is a formal system of decision-making and accountability and structure to do that. And then support project delivery, really a robust way of delivering services and processes and support to the organization. The next pillar is technology and data, obviously, basis of the industry, really. This pillar really focuses not around the nuts and bolts so much of the technology and software and hardware or data and data models and environments. It's really about sort of the outcome of and the philosophy of your technology and data that delivers your geospatial services. So in this case, what we're really looking at is that the leaders are really focused on implementing an environment that is scalable, is flexible, in a way that it really prioritizes easy, ready access to geospatial information. So the leaders have really made it easy, because really what you want, and data is king in this world, and you want to make it as easy as possible to get, yes, secure, authoritative content control, but really allow people to get at the information they need, and then start to use some of that literacy skill set that we talked about, so that they can actually start to build and be creative with the data in a way that makes it valuable for the organization. So you can see here as an example from a midstream business. They focus their strategy really around their technology strategy anyway, around migration. It was really starting from an older model, shall we say, where they had disconnected point solutions across different departments, multiple data map viewers on different technology stacks and different departments. Moved it first into a more integrated solution oriented really around a lot of cross-department workflows rather than department by department, as well as opening it up to other devices, particularly mobile devices. And then 3 is really moving then into a really broad integrated system that really supports many different stakeholders, workflows, devices, external systems, data sources, all in this kind of common environment. So the point is the emphasis has really been on that flexibility, that scalability of the technology to allow for real easy, ready access to data. Not surprisingly, the 2 practices here reflect that. The final example here is from the culture pillar, something that I think folks innately understand, but just have never really maybe been able to articulate. And this is something that came up time and time again in the research as so important to really thriving with GIS and geospatial technology. And culture really, it refers to how we cultivate behaviors, how we nurture a mindset, ingrain what we could call spatial thinking and spatial know-how into the day-to-day behaviors and activities of everyone who works at the organization. Having a geospatial culture means that people think about geo as part of their day-to-day jobs, when they're in planning meetings, when they're communicating, when they're sending out emails, when they're sending out, postings or bulletins to stakeholders or partners. It's embedded in everything. You think about, there could be a way to communicate this information on a map, or there could be some kind of difference across the different parts of the world that we operate. That's what a culture of location or geospatial looks like. And so there's many ways to do this, though. It's easy to say that. It's an aspirational kind of statement. But to actually do this, I think there's some really key tactical ways to do this, and some that we've seen take foot are listed on the screen from this transmission business. One is to start an actual formal program around geospatial awareness, and they start to do things like incorporating geospatial information, data, statistics, maps, all in the digital signage or on the corporate internet within the organization. Having monthly presentations on the topics. It can be a recorded session, it can be posted up internally, it can be hosted, writing articles, contributing kind of to the knowledge leadership within the organization or outside of the organization, having a landing site. So all of this going in to really promote and actively cultivate this awareness of geospatial. And then the other side of that is more formally a community of practice, where not only are you now just making the organization generally aware, there's now actually a committed group of people that investigate, research, facilitate new standards, new methods, new opportunities for geospatial on the day-to-day. And it really does promote that collaboration and knowledge transfer between the various users. And the key practices of the culture, like I said, many of these embedded in the awareness program and the community practice previously. But the three real key cultural practices that stood out from the research were innovation, and that means that it's something acknowledged. Innovation is acknowledged as a key priority for senior leadership, and there's actual funding for innovation, particularly ideally for geospatial-based initiatives. Collaboration means that it's collaboration across departments is supported by leadership, that there's mechanisms to do this. Things like communities of practice help with this, where they bring together, formalize a program to collaborate on shared opportunities or cross-functional issues. And then the final piece is promotion and awareness. This is just essentially the marketing, and selling, and awareness building around geo. And so taking real actionable, regular steps to promote the value, power of geospatial can really, really go a long way. Just to finish, like I said, those are the 5 pillars. And you might be thinking to yourself at this point, that's a lot to take on. There's a lot here. What practical steps can I take to mature and improve and grow our program? And I'd say my recommendation here is there's really 2 main practical first steps that you could take. Say running a diagnostic and then developing your strategy. So in the first case, and they kind of go in that order. So in the first case, the diagnostic just means looking at where you are today. So look at those practices, run through a little bit of an evaluation. Are you weak? Are you in the middle? Are you strong? Do you have opportunities or key issues at any of those major practices that I discussed? How do you compare, if you have this access to information, how do you compare to some of your peers in the industry or other organizations and perhaps other industries that are experiencing some of the same challenges? And where are your gaps? Where are the major gaps? And where do you think are the targeted areas for improvement? Is it in your strategy? Is it in your culture? Are all those great, but you have some serious technology and data issues? Which areas are priority, and figuring those out is important. The second then is do something about it. And that really means developing a strategy to improve and grow and mature. It really all starts here. So the focus on this, I would say, is make it business driven. So really focus on the needs of your business. Don't do it straight from the technology side out. Start with the business side in, and then come up with a plan of action. Try to elevate and mature yourself along those practice areas. Make some key decisions. So don't be afraid to think about what people you need, what roles are out of date, what technology solutions need to be retired or brought in. And then ultimately get the leadership involved as well. So get your leadership engaged in this process and committed to your strategy. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. I appreciate you for listening. If you like this material, do follow me online. on LinkedIn. There's my contact information if you want to connect at another time. We can talk more in detail about any of these topics. You can also, as I said, on LinkedIn or on our Esri Canada blog site, we have lots of articles and content that we publish quite regularly that you can check out and learn more. And really, finally, a lot of this material and other topics are compiled and written up into an ebook that we released just at the tail end of last year. It's called Geospatial Strategy Essentials for Managers. There's the link below. Go in. It really is a compilation of topics related to strategy, governance, org design, culture, all the good stuff that I mentioned in this presentation today. So you can get it there, download it, have a read. And so with that, I'll say thank you, and hopefully with a few minutes left, take some questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. That was wonderful. We are going to dive into questions. Regarding governance, in some ways, geospatial technology is a specialized branch of IT. However, there are some differences between GIS and other branches of IT, and sometimes those differences can cause issues. Is it common for IT management to have a role on geospatial governance committees? And if so, what things should IT leaders learn about geospatial technology in order to make good decisions and strategic decisions regarding that tech?
Okay, an easy one right off the bat. Yeah, it is important. I think it's crucial that IT managers are involved to some level. Yes, and I always say this because GIS, geospatial technology, it isn't IT, right? It is an information technology. Thus, it relies on or is influenced by many of the different IT standards, architecture, standards, principles, policies of your overall IT portfolio. So I do think that your IT manager, if you're an IT manager or if you need to deal with your IT manager, it's imperative that they are involved and understand what are the requirements and what are the sort of how the geospatial connects into and integrates with the rest of the IT portfolio, just like any other system. There's some trepidation around that oftentimes, because I think a lot of IT managers don't come from a geospatial background. They don't know GIS. They're a little bit nervous to say, I want to get too involved with that. Usually they'll say, you know what, we'll support your virtual environment. We'll support everything up to the operating system level, and you're on your own after that. I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think perhaps you can do that as a kind of a practical day-to-day, but knowing, the trajectory of the program, the potential of it, the need to support it as part of a kind of a critical piece of your IT is a role of the IT manager, and they should be involved. So I think. So the second part was some techniques or tips to get involved. I think an IT manager should, one, start with a little bit of education, and no one has to become a GIS expert to be cognizant of its capabilities, but certainly doing enough to know how it interfaces with the IT environment, what it's providing to the users, what it's providing that, say, other enterprise systems are not, whether it's your CRM systems or your business intelligence platforms. What is it? What is unique about what the geospatial capabilities offer? And then how can you as the IT manager make sure that those are being done well and being supported well by a robust IT infrastructure? Perhaps even how you can integrate your GIS support team into the proper IT support desk if you have that in place, so that you're following best practices about service delivery. So a lot there in that question, a lot in that answer, but I'd say just as a takeaway, yes, it's very important that IT managers are involved.
Thank you, Matt. Can you recommend any specific strategies pertaining to geospatial data provisioning?
It depends. I think that's a very large question. Like with data provisioning in terms of acquisition or collection, because data collection and acquisition can range from, externally sourced, if you're talking, say, imagery, if you're talking about field data collection. I think the best advice I would say is think about the whole of your data acquisition, data collection life cycle, and think about it as, are you sourcing it from a trusted source, whether it's your own people or if it's from a contractor or if it's from external provider of information?
have a process to make sure you're not buying data twice or 3 times or 8 times. I've seen that. So I guess first start off with how you're doing a bit of an inventory about where you're sourcing information from, and if there's a lot of overlap and redundancy, the gap, overlap with doing that, and then feed it into your validation and QA process, making sure the data is in fact meeting the standards that your organization wants. So I'd say it's take a whole life cycle approach to data and data period, and part of that life cycle is acquisition, collection, provisioning.
Great. Okay. We'll fit in one last question. So just regarding some guidance on how to even start building a geospatial strategy, for those folks who are starting from the ground up.
Where to start? I believe start, like I kind of mentioned in the last couple of slides, start with your business. So work from the business on in as opposed to your technology on out. So the first place to start, I think, is by understanding the needs of your users or your departments in their terms. So what is it that they're trying to accomplish in terms of their business goals, in terms of their issues, in terms of their needs? Then look at how GIS and Geo are currently meeting those needs today, or where they're falling short, or where there's a lot of opportunity that you never thought about. So start canvassing across and understanding where the business needs are. From there, you'll have a bit of a mini case to say, oh, we've got a lot of pent up demand here, a lot of need, a lot of unknown opportunities that we didn't, or newly known opportunities. From there, I'd say then it's a case of talking with your leadership to say, we've got a lot of need, we need to put in a proper strategy. And that means going through and thinking about people, the process, technology complement that you have today, and then what do you need in the future to meet these needs, and then ultimately a plan to implement. So start with understanding where the business needs are and how GIS can or may not support those areas, and then work from there.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Thank you for joining us. And for those folks who are interested in joining us for a future session, we do have our next one lined up for a month today, I believe, and it's going to be on the topic of carbon tax. So if that interests you, keep your eyes open for an invite, or use that link to the website I linked earlier to stay on top of that and register through there. So once again, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to everybody who joined us today over the hour, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.